Speakers fee debate, talking for a fee or talking for free.
Yes.
I think after you've kind of gained some credibility and you've gained some momentum, I really feel that speakers should be paid.
I don't even think it's being diplomatic. I think absolutely you're right in terms of the disingenuous nature of some of these requests that we get. It feels like a lot of these organisations only remember that women exist or only remember that black people exist during these months. That, I think, is reinforced by not having budget.
I do see a lot of, we don't really have a budget. And for that makes me concerned as well, how important is this event really to you? Because what you're telling me is that
What are we talking about today?
let's have a look. Let's
Drum roll,
see.
please. Do you have drum roll? Speakers fees debate. Talking for a fee or talking for free?
Okay, I
What are
have
your
some
thoughts?
thoughts on this. So, speakers fee debate, talking for a fee or talking for free?
Yes.
If we had to choose one of them, I've got some thoughts around it,
Go on.
obviously, but talking for a fee.
Why so?
I think there's like a run-up. I do a lot of speaking. You do a lot of speaking.
A little bit.
Yeah, stop
and
it.
there.
We do a lot of speaking. And I think there is a run-up where you need to learn, you're learning your craft, right? So I think at that point, I'm not saying that somebody should go out and start charging thousands of pounds to corporate companies if it's the first time you've ever spoken. Potentially. I'm still not ruling that out.
Go on.
But potentially. But I think after you've kind of gained some credibility and you've gained some momentum, I really feel that speakers should be paid. I actually feel very passionately. Again, I'm ambassador for 2 charities. That's all for free. So if it's for charity, if it's something that's going to help the business, it's something you're really passionate about, different conversation. But International Women's Day is a really good example of this. And I think you might be able to relate on Black History / Black Futures Month, right? You get asked to do so much speaking to elevate women in this topic point. And yet many of those women don't have any financial gain on the back of it, but time taken away. And that for me doesn't make sense now. I actually feel really passionate about it. In fact, it really gets under my skin, actually, to be honest. Yeah. But tell me what you think, Matt, because you're more diplomatic than me.
I don't even think it's being diplomatic. I think absolutely you're right in terms of the disingenuous nature of some of these requests that we get during International Women's Day month, during Black History Month, Black Futures Month, whatever we want to call it. It feels like a lot of these organisations only remember that women exist or only remember that black people exist during these months. And that, I think, is reinforced by not having budget.
Yes.
However, I'm not in this kind of blanket default, everybody must charge for it. I think you're right, people need to earn that credibility, they need to earn the license to be able to charge. I also think that it can become quite disingenuous on the speaker's behalf to say actually they are never asked to speak during the year. This is kind of their one window of opportunity and they must maximise it. I think that feels a bit...
And we've seen that.
Transactional.
I don't know if you've seen that. I've seen that at times. So I do hear what you're saying.
And sorry to cut you. It's like you're not a speaker. So it's like me. It's a really weird analogy. But it's charging to play a game of football during a specific month, and the rest of the year I play for free.
No, it's not.
Is it not?
No, because you're being asked to play the game of football to see your skills. Right? Because that's you're not there as an extra player. You're actually there as the main feature to showcase your story or your experience or your football skills in this scenario. I don't know how good they are.
It's a weird analogy.
Are they good? All right. If anyone wants Matt for the football.
I'm injured, knee injury.
But
it's really
I think when it's big companies that have got budget, when we're talking about events where there's advocacy or, like I say, there's a charity, there's an ambassadorship, or it's something, for you and I, we get asked to speak a lot, even around our own businesses. That might be different if it's with youth or it's, you really, you're excited to bring your own thoughts and knowledge, to it. I think that's different, even in a podcast environment potentially. But when you are on a stage and you are speaking, and there is budget. I've been at some productions where they've got the most amazing production. Like I'm going up on the stage, there's lighting, there's an AV team, there's this. And I'm there to spit.
Music.
Yeah, everything. It's the X Factor. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm really confused because no one's getting paid, but it's the most amazing setup that I've seen. And that for me is, it's tricky to understand after a certain period of time of doing it, I think.
And is it something that you can feel out on the conversation kind of beforehand? Do you get a good feel for like which organisations are doing this to maximise their profits, for example, or which ones genuinely don't have budget and want to do the best and want to put on a good production but just don't have that within their gift?
Yeah, and I think there is a difference between those, and some of the ones that maybe don't have a big budget. I've spoken up recently, they've done charity donations to the charities that I'm ambassador for. Amazing. So I've exchanged that in exchange for that. That makes sense to me. That's not a problem
why is that though? Because it's like you're not necessarily directly getting the benefit.
No.
That's, for me, speaks to the fact that there is budget there.
Yes.
But it's a case of like, where's that budget going?
I agree, and I'm not sure. It's interesting to navigate. And is it actually that there needs to be more of an open conversation? Like I remember Mel Robbins speaking on a podcast, right? And she said, I was at this event and I realised that I wasn't getting paid for it. Somebody came over to me and said, oh, have you got your check yet? Big event. Yeah. And she thought, check? I'm not getting paid. What do you mean I'm not getting paid for it? And she went, oh. And that was the moment she said the penny dropped. And after that, I was deciding, what do I do? Because the question is, what do you do? You know, I think it's very different. I know personally that when I'm representing my business and the business, I would have conversations around rates and terms all day long because I'm confident with what we do and what our results are and all of that stuff. I found it a really big shift as an individual, going from Harper Fox Partners to Scarlett, speaking about me and my story. A massive difference, and almost like, oh, can I charge? Could I? That was a real big transition. And what she said she did, and I took note of what she did, was she asked, okay, what's the budget? And paused. Yeah. And then said, I'm normally double that, and paused. Yeah. And I haven't quite done that, but I've been doing some of that, and the difference has been massive. So I think there was an element of maybe personally me asking, but secondary to that, I do see a lot of, oh, we don't really have a budget. Yeah. And for that makes me concerned as well, how important is this event really to you? Because what you're telling me is that this is pinnacle for the people in the business at this time, but is it because your budget's not going here? Absolutely. So that doesn't add up to me. And
it's an interesting one because I don't have the same kind of segregation in terms of Mac as a brand or Mac as the Equal Group founder. Everything goes through the Equal Group. So I've never had that kind of tension as to whether to ask for budgets and things like that. It's just built into the process. So any request that comes in, we ask what the budget is, we ask logistical information, we ask for all of these kind of standard questions.
Okay.
However, I will tell you what I do genuinely when it comes to Black History Month.
Oh yeah, this is a really good example.
It's a case of whether I like you or not. And if I like you, I'll speak for free. Like, I've got genuinely, I don't care how big the business is. I don't care kind of what the technicalities are or whatever. Like, if I like you, we've got a relationship and you ask me to speak, I'm assuming that you're asking me because you know the value that I can bring, and also you're kind of leveraging the relationship. If it's a cold email from Joe Blogs that I've never heard of, and I don't really know you don't really know your brand, I don't care. I'm charging you, and I'm charging you my commercial rates, and those rates don't change. We don't inflate our rates for Black History Month. Just standard. Whatever we charge is what we charge. I'm not going to necessarily say what we charge, but what we charge is what we charge.
Okay, so on that basis then, if we were giving some advice maybe to speakers, up and coming speakers, or people that have been asked to speak at events, in your opinion, if they don't or do like the people, should they be asking to get paid, or should a company have a budget for their speakers? What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think it's always good practice to ask. Ask the question. Yeah. You don't ask, you don't get. That's the fundamental principle that I live by. But it also does depend on, I think, a couple of things. Like, are you a speaker? Are you good at speaking? Is this something that you do? Something that you've taken the time to actually plan out and learn? Yeah. I don't necessarily readily position myself as a speaker, and that's probably why I'm less concerned about budgets and charging and all of those kind of things. And then it's a case of like, you know, what is it that is happening? You know, is it they're just asking you because you're black and it's Black History Month? Feels a little bit transactional. And I know there's like a school of thought that wants to lean into this. You know, I'm sharing my story, I'm sharing part of my life, therefore I need to be compensated for it because it's very traumatic to relive some of these experiences.
Sometimes it really is though.
I agree, but I also think that there's a sensitivity, and it's a personal choice to say, you know, am I ready to share this with the world? If it's something that's going to take that much of a toll on you and it's going to bring up things that are quite traumatic to you, you know, you need to ask yourself that question, like, am I ready to share this? Am I going to be okay sharing this? Because I guess I also have a mindset where there's no amount of money that can repair your mental health. So actually, if you're putting yourself in a position that is fundamentally damaging to your mental health and your well-being, it's not a question of money or no money. It's a question of, are you comfortable sharing that story? Are you comfortable standing on a stage? Are you comfortable being judged by the audience based on what you're saying? Like, it can be quite a traumatic thing. I don't think, from what I've seen, everyone can answer that positively. I don't think everybody could universally say, I'm okay with sharing my trauma. I'm going to be okay as a result of that. I think especially the last couple of years, we've seen some very traumatic things that people have gone through that people have just shared openly. And like, actually, are you okay? You know, I've had many conversations with people and pulled them aside and just been like, are you okay? Because I've seen things that you shared on LinkedIn, I've seen posts, and it doesn't feel like you're dealing with this in the right way.
What are you struggling to deal with this? But you know what I'll say though, and I think there's so much truth in what you've just said. I think sometimes when you're on a stage or you're on a podcast and there's maybe a Q&A, or you might just be in an environment where someone runs up to you and says, oh my gosh, I've had that experience. I've been caught off guard. I've been talking about my story for a number of years now, about 5 years. And I've had a lot of therapy and all sorts of things. I would think I'm in a good place and equipped. But sometimes something can just catch you off guard. You're like, oh, I haven't thought about that for a moment. Oh, I'm just reliving that for a moment. And you didn't expect it. And so I think it's sometimes hard to be prepared for that. But maybe it's good to be mindful, I think, of what you're saying, because there's such a big valid point there, especially with some of the topics we're talking about. You know, we're not just talking about international women's or, you know, Black futures, or we're talking about lots of different things, aren't we? But it's a very, very good point that you make.
And I think there's something so powerful about that. And again, this goes back to what we were saying earlier on in terms of what stage are you at in your kind of level of development. And one of the things that I have seen that's been quite problematic is people on LinkedIn that have been doing this for years, have been speaking for like 10, 15 years, really advocating for people to, you know, you shouldn't speak for less than $5,000. It's like,
I've seen that. I've seen that.
There's no way you can enforce that. Like, if you're a recent graduate that's just been asked to contribute to a panel discussion on Black History Month, like, I think that's a fundamental difference between being asked to speak on a panel and being asked to keynote. And the price should adjust accordingly. I don't think it's fair for everyone to say that. However, I do see the commercial side of things to say it's in these people's interest to advocate for people to charge no less than $5,000, because you're then going to be in a situation where it's like, okay, do we pay this recent grad $5,000 to speak, or do we get this speaker that's been speaking for 10, 15 years and pay his rate of 10, $5,000, whatever it is?
I think what happens with this a little bit though is it just reminds me of employee resource groups. If I think about some of the events that I'm asked to speak at, they are typically around women. Not always. Sometimes they're business growth and mindset and big vision, but often they can be around women or around women of colour. I think those kind of conversations, right? The people that are often the ones that are leading those events are actually often doing that in their spare time.
Yes.
And so they're like, oh, we don't really have a budget. Quite honestly, they're already managing 2 or 3 different roles anyway. So then you feel like, oh, how can I help them? Because I relate to you. So I want to support. And I think the conversation around being paid is because of that, because it's those people that are really bringing true impact to the businesses. It's been led from the top, and in terms of that, but the budget isn't always there to support it. And then we see that same thing happening with the speakers, even if they're internally or externally. And again, for me, and this is why I'm passionate, and I do lots of things for free, to be clear, like lots of pro bono work. You know, I'm passionate about giving back. But that said, that's why I'm hot on this topic, because it's about showing there is a value in this person's voice. We want to elevate different people. So there is a financial impact to that. It's saying that you're important and what you're saying is important to our organisation. And for me, when you're at a certain level, it's key.
But I don't think it's an either or. And I do agree with what you're saying. I think
depending on the...
I think it's 100% valid that a lot of these people that are running ERGs and running networks are doing it through their own passion, their own kind of drive. Doing an amazing job.
And to be clear, aside from the money, amazing opportunities, amazing stakeholder, amazing development opportunities. I understand all of that. I don't take away from that.
And that's kind of one of the things I was going to touch on, to say actually we're forgetting the other benefits.
Yeah.
And, I'm by no means saying that, just do loads of speaking events for exposure, and exposure doesn't pay your rent and exposure doesn't pay your bills, and it's not going to buy you new shoes, or you can't go into to a shop and get a new suit based off of exposure. But what I am saying is it does add to your skill set. Even what you said there about being challenged in a way that you're not expecting, either on a panel session or during Q&A. Those are things that add to your skill set. So it's like, actually, the first time it happens, it might take you back. Second time it happens, it might take you back again. Third, fifth, 10th time it happens, you realize that you've built a muscle that allows you to reflect and to respond to some of these things, and it doesn't feel as tasking. Those things aren't just relevant on the stage, they're also relevant in the boardroom, they're also relevant in interviews, they're also relevant in negotiations. So there's all kinds of different aspects that it can be beneficial. And actually, are you gonna sacrifice that for £200 or £300? Like, you don't know the long term value.
Or £2,000 or £3,000. Yeah.
So you're clearly out of
or
my
for
range.
some people, or for some £30,000. These speaker suites can be very high. I think you're absolutely right. I actually think that is correct. I think there's this element, and it's funny you say this, and probably my conclusion on it is this, that I was thinking about it this morning, funnily enough, from putting myself in very uncomfortable positions of going onto stages. That is not my forte at all. And having these really vulnerable conversations and being judged. The skill set that I've built on the back of that has actually been huge, and I'm really grateful for it. So I definitely hear you on that, and I think there is exposure for people that need exposure as well. Like, they necessarily wouldn't be in rooms where some of these other people, they've got this great opportunity to have this amazing exposure, but I still feel ask about the budget.
Absolutely. And
pay your speakers where you can.
I agree, and I think
the event's making profit. Sorry to interrupt you.
And I think there should be a budget. I think it's a case of understanding the context within which you're working. And I think sometimes we can lose that nuance in messages on LinkedIn about everybody should be charging for Black History Month, because you lose that aspect of where are you in your career, what organization are you talking about, what's the subject that you're talking about, is it traumatic, is it something that's positive and uplifting, does it allow you to speak to leaders and executive team members that you may never ordinarily come across in a day-to-day basis. So there's so much nuance that gets lost in this, should we charge, should we not charge, and it can be a lot more difficult for people to come to that decision. I think again, based on what I've seen over the years, and I guess my willingness to speak for free, because I think that's what it comes down to ultimately, to say, are you willing to speak for free? And I think most speakers that I know do speak for free, but they make that choice as to when and where, when's it appropriate to speak for free or not. But it is that I think that willingness to speak for free, or to put your voice out there, to have a moment that then unlocks some of that intangible. So the experience that you get, the rooms that you have access to, some of the conversations that you're able to have on the stage. I think sometimes speaking can be seen as this transactional relationship where you just speak and the only benefit that you receive is the financial benefit, and actually it's not. There's so much more that you get from being in rooms and Q&As and networks and those kind of things, and I don't want people to lose the other positives that come from those opportunities.
I think you'd be out of our budget.
Well, I speak for free if I like. So
I was going to say.
All we have to do is work on the relationship.
All within it. You just need to like us first.
This is it. All right, so what are your final thoughts?
So, final thoughts. You've given me some food for thought, so that's good. So, final thoughts are, if you're a speaker, I think look at maybe the network and the development opportunities, which is what we've talked about as well, and the skill set that you'd be developing. So definitely consider those things. I think it's something you're really passionate about talking about. I speak about domestic abuse a lot. I wouldn't dream of asking to have a charge for that. So if it's something you're passionate about, advocacy wise, different conversation. But if it is an event that is profitable, making money on the back of having speakers like you, and a company that's a very profitable company or a very big company, or even small, then I absolutely would say ask about their budget.
Yeah, I'd agree with that wholeheartedly. I think for me, the takeaway for speakers is understanding where you are on the journey and actually where you want to get to. And I think understanding the importance of some of these opportunities and some of these, speaking occasions, the benefit that can add to your journey and where you're trying to get to, and don't necessarily be so fixated on the money. What I've also experienced historically and even to this day is when I offer to speak for free, people pay me a bit as well. So it's like that, I might say, well, I'll come and do this for you, and not even mention the budget, not even bring it up.
Yeah.
But they'll kind of retrospectively say, look, we know we can't give you much, or I want to give you something. And I think that's really kind of good validation to say, I could have broached the budget earlier on, and it might have turned their nose up, or there's so much in that I think needs to be considered when thinking about whether to take opportunities or not. The second point I wanted to make is really about the trauma side of things. So it's like if you're being asked to reflect on your trauma, to share things that you're not necessarily holistically comfortable with, there's also like a risk issue there as well that I'm not sure some of the less experienced people get, in terms of if you're on a stage and you're being very vocal about the company that you work for and very, challenging about your work circumstances or things that you've seen in the organization, and not doing it in a productive way, that automatically puts a target on your back. And actually you have to have that ability to be able to bring people in and take people on a journey in a way that doesn't feel offensive or doesn't feel like you're being problematic in the way that you're communicating. So I think there's definitely a fine line there.
I love that.
And then I think for leaders, I would say challenge yourself. If you have historically done events with an expectation that people will speak for free, challenge yourself to say, why isn't there a budget? And there's usually budgets for team days and outings and training and all of these things that we know it takes to run a successful business. Why aren't we looking at things like Black History Month or International Women's Month in the same way, to say this is something that's key to what we do, therefore we need to allocate a budget in the hopes of making sure it's as effective as possible. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more with that. I like the challenge you, and is that enabling you as an organisation to bring in the best people to discuss these topics as well? Because some people just will say no. It's as simple as that. Yeah. So is it maybe yes, maybe not? So yeah.
Absolutely.
Good point.
Amazing.
We're like the awkward enders.